Many people go through their entire lives, never realizing the damage that their mothers have caused. They feel like something's just off, like there's this emptiness inside them. Their relationships just don't work. But they never connect it back to their mother figure, because questioning mom, that feels forbidden, feels wrong, feels like ingratitude. It's a societal taboo almost. Carl Jung spent decades studying the impact that mothers have on the formation of the psyche, and he identified exactly 3 things that reveal whether a mother inflicted what we call narcissistic injury. 3 markers that show up in adulthood, 3 signs that most people just ignore or rationalize away. Today, I'm going to reveal these 3 signs, and when you recognize them, things are going to click for you. You're going to understand so much about your life, about your relationships, about your patterns, about that emptiness that you've never been able to explain. But I need to warn you, what you're about to discover here might be difficult to accept. It might bring up feelings that you've preferred to bury deep down. It might make you question things that you've always believed to be true. So brace yourself before we start. I want to say something important. If you're watching this, but it's because something in you already knows, or some part of you already suspects, already feels that something is wrong, already perceives that the relationship with your mother left its marks. This video isn't going to tell you anything that you don't already know deep down. It's just going to name it. It's going to put words to what you've always felt, but never been able to express. Let's get to the first sign. The first marker of maternal destruction is the difficulty in receiving love. It's one of the most devastating and invisible wounds, and you can have everything: success, beauty, people who love you, but you just can't feel it. Let me explain how this works. When a mother loves healthily, the child learns that they are worthy of love, that they deserve affection, that they can receive caring without having to do anything in return. This learning happens in the first years of life, and it forms the basis of all future relationships. But when the mother is narcissistic, something different happens. The love that she offers comes with conditions, with expectations, with demands. The child learns that love is something that needs to be earned, something that can be taken away and at any moment, something dangerous. And this child grows up and becomes an adult who can't receive love. When someone says, "I love you," they feel distrust. When someone offers affection, they retreat. When someone wants to take care of them, they feel suffocated. This happens because their nervous system has been programmed to see love as a threat, as something that comes with a price, as something that will be used against them. Jung called this the negative mother complex. The mother becomes an internalized figure that distorts the ability to receive love. And this figure doesn't just disappear when the person grows up. It's still there, whispering, sabotaging, destroying relationships. Do you recognize this in yourself? When someone truly loves you, do you feel like you don't deserve it? Do you wait for the other person to notice your flaws and leave? Do you sabotage the relationship before you can be abandoned? Do you choose unavailable people because their love is easier to tolerate? This is the first sign: the inability to receive love. A wound that seems invisible, but that affects absolutely everything in your life. Let me tell you about a woman I worked with. She was 38 years old, beautiful, successful, married to a man who clearly loved her, but she just couldn't feel it. She told me that when her husband said, "I love you," she felt a knot in her stomach. when he tried to take care of her. She got irritated when he showed affection. She pulled away. She thought the problem was the marriage, that maybe she didn't love her husband anymore, that she needed someone different. But when we investigated, we discovered something different. Her mother was a cold woman, distant, who only offered affection. When her daughter met her expectations, who withdrew love as punishment, who used caring as a bargaining chip. The girl learned that love is dangerous, that it comes with conditions, that it will be taken away, and now the adult woman couldn't receive the unconditional love that her husband offered because she had never learned that it even existed. When she understood this, something changed. Not instantly, but little by little. She began to allow herself to receive, to lower her defenses, to believe that maybe she deserved to be loved. Let's get to the second sign. The second marker is a relentless, internal critical voice. You know this voice. It's the voice that says that you're not good enough, that criticizes everything you do, that finds flaws where no one else sees them, that calls you stupid, or incompetent, ugly, inadequate. This voice feels like yours, seems to come from within you. But Jung discovered something important. This voice isn't yours. It's an implanted voice, a voice that came from outside, and in most cases, it came from the mother. Let me explain how this happens. When a narcissistic mother looks at her child, she doesn't see a separate person. She sees an extension of herself, a reflection, an object. And this object needs to be perfect, needs to meet her expectations, needs to compensate for her failures. So she starts to correct, to criticize, to point out flaws, not because the child has real flaws, but because she needs him to be different from who he is. And the child internalizes this critical voice. It becomes the inner critic, the relentless judge, the perfectionist, who is never satisfied. Jung would say that the narcissistic mother implants a negative imago in the child's psyche, an internal representation of the critical mother that continues operating even when the real mother isn't present. You can live in another country. You may not have spoken to your mother in years. You might not even remember the specific criticisms she made, but the voice continues because it's become part of you, a part that you don't even realize is imported. This is the second sign, an internal critical voice that never stops, a voice that judges you more harshly than anyone else on the outside, a voice that has a mother's accent, but that you confuse with yours. I want to give you a practical example of how this works. A 45-year-old man came to see me because he was exhausted. He worked 16 hours a day. He was never satisfied with anything he produced. He redid reports 5 times. He came home destroyed, but couldn't rest because the voice said that he should be doing more. When I asked where this voice came from, he said it was his, that he had always been like this, perfectionistic, demanding, hard on himself. But when we explored his childhood, a pattern emerged. His mother criticized everything. His grades were never good enough. His achievements were never celebrated. There was always something he could have done better. She didn't yell, didn't hit. She simply looked with that look of disappointment and said things like, "You could have tried harder. or "I expected more of you." These phrases seem harmless, but when repeated thousands of times throughout a childhood, they become the internal voice, the relentless critic, the judge who is never satisfied. When this man realized that the voice wasn't his, something shifted. He began to question it, to recognize when it surfaced, to say, "No, this isn't my voice," and the exhaustion began to fade. Let's move on to the third sign. The third marker is the inability to know what you want. It sounds simple, but it's devastating. You don't know what you desire. You don't know what makes you happy. You don't know who you really are. When someone asks you what you want for dinner, you draw a blank. When someone asks where you want to go on vacation, you shrug. When someone asks what you want out of life, you definitely haven't a clue. This happens because your mother didn't allow you to develop a separate identity. She needed you to be an extension of her, to want what she wanted, to feel what she felt, to be what she needed you to be. Carl Jung called this mystical participation, a psychological fusion between mother and child that should have been severed in childhood. But in narcissistic families, it never is. The child isn't allowed to have their own desires. When they express a wish, the mother ignores it, or criticizes it, or replaces it with her own will. Little by little, the child learns that their desires don't matter, that it's safer to want nothing, that it's easier to ask what others want. And this child grows up and becomes an adult who is out of touch with their own desires, who doesn't know what they want, who lives life responding to the expectations of others, who gets lost in relationships because they assume the partner's identity, who never knows if the decisions they make are truly their own. This is the third sign, the loss of contact with the true self, the inability to know what you want, the sensation of being a chameleon that changes according to the environment, but has no color of its own. Let me illustrate this with another example. A 32-year-old woman, my Sarah, came to see me in crisis. Her third relationship had just ended. All the partners said the same thing, that they didn't know who she really was, that she seemed to mold herself to them, that she had no opinion of her own. She was confused. She thought she was being a good partner, adapting, being flexible, but in reality she was disappearing. When we explored her childhood, the pattern became clear. Her mother, a woman named Patricia, was a dominating woman who decided everything: what her daughter would wear, what she would eat, who she would play with, what she would study. And every time the girl tried to express a preference, she was ignored or ridiculed. "You don't know what you want. I know what's best for you. Let me decide." Little by little, the girl stopped trying, stopped wanting, stopped having desires, and she became a woman who didn't know who she was, who assumed the identity of each partner, who got lost in each relationship. The healing for her was a slow process of rediscovery, of learning to ask, "What do I want?" of tolerating the discomfort of not knowing, of slowly finding her own preferences buried under years of silencing. Now let me talk about why these three signs are so important. These three markers are interconnected. They form a syndrome, a pattern that repeats in the lives of children of narcissistic mothers. You can't receive love because you've learned that love is dangerous. You have a relentless critical voice because you internalized your mother's criticism. You don't know what you want because you never had permission to have your own desires. These three together create a life of silent suffering, of relationships that don't work, of decisions that don't feel like your own, of a void that nothing fills. And the cruelest part is that most people don't connect this to their mother, because society teaches us that mothers are saints, that mothers always want what's best, that questioning your mother is ingratitude. Carl Jung challenged this view. He recognized that mothers are human beings, with wounds, with shadows, with limitations, and that some mothers cause deep damage in their children, not necessarily out of malice, but because of their own unhealed wounds. There's a powerful taboo surrounding the maternal figure. Society teaches us from an early age that we must love our mothers unconditionally, that they always want what's best, that any criticism is ingratitude. This taboo protects loving mothers, but it also protects destructive mothers. It silences children who have been damaged, makes them feel guilty for feeling angry, makes them doubt their own experience. Carl Jung would say that this taboo serves society, not the individual. It maintains social order, keeps families functioning, keeps children obedient, but at the cost of leaving wounds untreated, of creating broken adults who don't understand why they are broken. Questioning your mother isn't ingratitude. It's an act of courage, and it's the first step towards healing. It's the only way to break free from the negative mother complex. I want to talk now about how these signs manifest in different areas of life. At work, the person who carries these markers is usually a perfectionist, works too much, is never satisfied with what they produce, has difficulty accepting praise, feels like a fraud waiting to be discovered. The internal critical voice doesn't allow them to rest, to celebrate achievement, to feel competent. In romantic relationships, they choose partners who replicate the maternal dynamic, critical people, unavailable people, people who make them feel inadequate. When they find someone who truly loves them, they feel discomfort, sabotage the relationship, or simply can't connect. In friendships, they tend to please too much, to put the needs of others above their own, to not know how to say no, to get lost in the identity of their friends, to feel used, but incapable of establishing boundaries. In the relationship with themselves, they are too harsh, too critical, too demanding, never feel good enough, never allow themselves to rest, never give themselves permission to simply exist. In their health, they may develop physical symptoms that are manifestations of emotional pain, chronic pains, digestive problems, muscle tension, constant fatigue. The body carries what the mind can't process. In spirituality, they may have difficulty connecting with something greater because they've learned that they don't deserve love, that they are inadequate, that they need to strive to deserve attention. This belief contaminates even the relationship with the divine. These patterns seem normal to those who live with them. The person thinks that's just how they are, that they were born that way, that it's their personality. But in reality, it's the mother's mark, the programming that was installed in childhood. Carl Jung observed that most people live their entire lives without realizing this programming. They repeat the same patterns. They choose the same types of partners. They feel the same emptiness, and they call it destiny. They call it bad luck. They say, that's just how life is. But it isn't destiny. It's the negative mother complex operating in the unconscious. It's the mother's shadow manifesting through the child's choices. It's the original narcissistic injury expressing itself in increasingly creative and often destructive ways. The only way to break this cycle is to bring the negative mother complex into conscious awareness. And that's what we're doing now, naming it, recognizing it, illuminating what was hidden in the shadows. Now, I want to talk about healing, because recognizing the signs is only the first step. The first step in healing is exactly what you are doing right now. Recognizing, naming, understanding where it all came from. This already begins to weaken the negative mother complex, because what was unconscious becomes conscious. And consciousness is the first step toward change. The second step is to grieve. You need to mourn the mother you never had, the mother who should have loved you unconditionally, the mother who should have seen you as a separate individual, the mother who should have allowed you to have your own desires. This grief is painful, but it is necessary. The third step is to separate your mother's voice from your own voice. When that critical inner voice appears, stop. Ask yourself, whose voice is that? Recognize that it is not your own. Gradually, you begin to develop your own voice, a voice that's kinder, more compassionate, more authentic, The fourth step is to reconnect with your desires. Start small. What do you want to eat? What do you want to wear? What do you want to do this weekend? These may seem like simple questions, but for someone who has lost touch with their true self, they are revolutionary. The fifth step is learning to receive love. This requires gradual exposure, starting with small gestures of affection, allowing someone to help you, accepting a compliment without dismissing it. Gradually, you recalibrate your nervous system, showing it that love is not danger. The sixth step is to find witnesses, people who truly see you, who reflect your real value, who offer the healthy mirroring that your mother did not provide. This could be a therapist, a true friend, a loving partner, someone who replaces the mother's distorted mirror with a mirror that's more true. The seventh step is to reparent your inner child. You need to become the mother you never had. Offer yourself the unconditional love that was missing, the validation that never came, the permission to have your own desires. This may seem strange at first, but it is powerful. This process takes time. You've spent years being programmed by your mother. You won't undo that in weeks, but every small step counts. Every moment of awareness weakens the negative mother complex. Every different choice creates a new pattern. Carl Jung believed that individuation requires confronting the negative mother complex, psychologically separating yourself from your mother, becoming a whole and autonomous person. And this is possible, no matter how many years of narcissistic injury you carry. I want to talk about something important. Forgiving your mother is not a requirement for healing. Many people believe they need to forgive in order to move on. But forced forgiveness can be just another way of invalidating your own pain, of minimizing what happened. What you need is to validate your experience. Recognize that the narcissistic injury was real, that your pain is legitimate, that you're not exaggerating, that it is not ingratitude to name what happened. Forgiveness, if it comes, will come naturally, as a consequence of healing, not as a prerequisite. You can heal even without forgiving. You can move forward even without reconciliation. You can free yourself even without your mother's blessing. I want to talk about something that many people ask. What if my mother is still alive? What if I still have to interact with her? How do I deal with that? The answer is that you can heal even while maintaining contact with your mother. But this requires clear boundaries, requires constant awareness, requires separating who she is from who you are becoming. Some children need to distance themselves completely, at least for a while, to have space to heal, to develop a separate identity, to hear their own voice without the interference of the mother's voice. Others manage to maintain reduced contact, occasional visits, superficial conversations, a functional relationship that isn't intimate but isn't absent either. There is no right answer. Each situation is unique. The important thing is that the decision is yours, not your mother's, not society's, not the critical voice that says you should be a better daughter. Carl Jung said that individuation often requires a period of separation from the parents, not necessarily physical, but psychological. A time to differentiate, to discover where the mother ends and you begin. This may seem selfish, it may seem like ingratitude. That critical inner voice will accuse you of abandonment. But in reality, it's the opposite. It's self-care. It's survival. It's the only way to become a whole person. Now I want to return to the 3 signs and give you some questions for reflection. Regarding the first sign, when was the last time you received love without suspicion? When was the last time you genuinely believed that someone loved you? Do you sabotage relationships when they get too good? Do you choose unavailable people because it's safer? Regarding the second sign, can you identify that critical inner voice? Does it sound like your mother's voice? Do you remember specific things she used to say? Do you notice that you treat yourself the way she treated you? Regarding the third sign, do you know what you want? When was the last time you made a decision based solely on what you wanted? Do you often ask for other people's opinions before deciding anything? Do you get lost in the identities of your partners? These questions are not meant to blame you. They are meant to help you see, to recognize, to name. Because what you see, you can change. I want to talk about generational transmission, because the narcissistic injury that your mother inflicted probably didn't start with her. She was probably narcissistically injured by her mother, who was narcissistically injured by her mother, and so on. Carl Jung observed that negative complexes are transmitted from generation to generation, like an invisible inheritance. The narcissistic mother didn't choose to be that way. She was formed by her own narcissistic mother. She is repeating a pattern that may span many generations in your family. This doesn't absolve her of responsibility. The narcissistic injury she caused is real. The pain you feel is legitimate. But understanding the generational chain can bring a different perspective. And more importantly, it can give you the determination to break the cycle, to be the generation that stops transmitting the narcissistic injury, to heal the wound so that it is not passed on. If you have children or plan to have them, this is one of the most powerful motivations for healing, not just for yourself, but for them, for the generations that will come after you. Carl Jung believed that when a person heals a complex, they don't just heal themselves, they heal the entire lineage, the ancestors who carried that wound, and the descendants who might have inherited it. This is sacred work, an act of courage, a silent revolution that happens within you, but reverberates for generations. I want to tell you about a patient who went through this process. Her name was Sarah. She was the mother of a 6-year-old girl, and she was repeating exactly what her mother had done to her. Sarah criticized her daughter constantly, couldn't demonstrate affection, expected perfection from a 6-year-old child. And when her daughter cried, she felt anger, not compassion. When Sarah realized what she was doing, she fell into despair. She felt like a monster, that she was destroying her daughter the same way she had been destroyed. The guilt was unbearable, but this moment of crisis was the beginning of her transformation. She began to work on her own wounds, to confront the negative mother complex, to separate her mother's voice from her own voice. And slowly, something changed. She began to look at her daughter with different eyes, to see a child who needed love, not an extension of herself, not an object, a separate and whole person. Sarah's healing wasn't just for her, it was for her daughter, for her grandchildren who were yet to come, as for her entire lineage. When she could embrace her daughter without reservations, when she could say "I love you" without expecting anything in return, when she could see her daughter make mistakes and feel compassion instead of anger, Sarah knew she had broken the cycle, and you can do the same. I want to end with something that Carl Jung said. He stated that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The negative mother complex operates in the unconscious. It directs your choices without you even realizing it, makes you repeat patterns, choose the wrong people, sabotage your happiness. But when you bring the complex into consciousness, everything changes. You're no longer on autopilot. You can see the pattern. You can question the voice. You can choose differently. And that's what this video is trying to do, to bring into the light what was in the shadows, to show the signs that you perhaps didn't want to see, to give a name to what you've always felt, but never knew how to explain. If you recognize the 3 signs in yourself, don't despair. Recognizing is the first step, and the fact that you're here watching this already shows that something within you wants to change, wants to heal, wants to be free. I want to leave you with a practical exercise. In the next few days, observe when the 3 signs appear in your life. When you reject a gesture of affection, ask yourself if it's the first sign. When the critical voice appears, ask yourself if it's the second sign. When you don't know what you want, ask yourself if it's the third sign. This exercise of observation already begins to weaken the complex, because you're bringing into consciousness what was operating in the unconscious. You're seeing the pattern. And when you see, you can choose differently. The healing journey isn't linear. You'll have better days and worse days. You'll have moments of clarity and moments of confusion. The critical voice will resist. The complex will fight to survive. But every small victory counts. Remember that you are not to blame for what was done to you. But you are responsible for your healing. No one can do it for you, not even your mother, especially your mother. Healing happens when you stop expecting her to change, when you stop expecting the love she will never give, when you start giving yourself what was lacking. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to have your own voice. You deserve to know what you want. You deserve to exist as a separate and whole person. And that doesn't depend on your mother. It depends on you. Leave in the comments how many signs you recognized. And if this video helped you understand something, share it with someone who needs to hear this. See you in the next video.